Hello? Does this work? Can you see me? Does this work? Let me know if you can see me or hear me. This is the first time I've ever done this before, but I've practiced it and I think I got it down. And so let me know if it's working down in the comments here. I'll just wait a few minutes for people to start coming in, and then I'll start getting to some questions. Just one moment. Okay, it's working. You can see me. Woohoo! I was waiting for someone to say something because on my end it looks like it's not working, so sweet. Yeah, can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you. So I'm seeing the comments come through. Wasn't sure how this is all going to work. So I actually saw lots of comments come in yesterday. I was ready to collect them all and kind of see which ones, to talk about. I woke up this morning and they were all gone. I don't know what happened. So chatted with YouTube and they have no idea what happened to them either. So I started seeing more come in today and I was like, sweet, I got more questions. And then all of a sudden they all disappeared again. I don't know what happened. So if one of you guys are super pros at this, let me know if you know what the problem is. But since we've got a lot of people here, I am just going to start going through some questions I asked on Instagram as well as YouTube. And so I'm just going to kind of do a mixture. And like I said, on YouTube, I wasn't sure if, I didn't get very many questions because it came in super, super late. But I'll keep track of, what's going on here. So I'm going to pull up in a question here that I got on Instagram today and kind of just go. And these are going to be probably all over the place, different topics and themes. So, first question. So can you please talk about the normalcy of OCD for those recently diagnosed? So a lot of new people are probably diagnosed with OCD and they might be questioning, is this a bad thing? Are people going to judge me? There's the stigma is definitely changing with the mental health world, but at the same time, we can still feel, people who struggle with OCD can feel very alone. And using words, that people use, about OCD can make them feel like something's wrong with them. And that's just something that I thought this was a really good question for people to know that nothing is wrong with you. You are a wonderful, great person. And it is absolutely okay that you have OCD. It's just something different. And I've said this before and sometimes people get confused, but you can actually find some pros with your OCD and what you're going through. Sometimes you have to dig pretty deep, but people who have OCD are some of the smartest people I've ever met. And so I think that's definitely a pro for most of you guys, or probably all of you guys. And so I just wanted to start this off with that. So I'm just going to keep rolling along, and let me know in the comments if something happens, if my feed turns off or whatever it might be. So one thing worries me. Let's see, I'll get that a little bigger so I can see. One thing worries me the repetition of my thoughts, that they will keep coming back even though I take all the power. And so that is very important. I know our idea is to take power away from the OCD thoughts, and we do that through exposure and response prevention. The hard part is that the thoughts sometimes don't want to stop, but that's perfectly fine. I think that's a hard answer to have, but to know that we all have intrusive thoughts. It's going to keep happening. But if you've taken the power away, then maybe the anxiety or stress or whatever you're feeling won't be there with that. And even if it is, that's actually okay too, because anxiety doesn't have to be the enemy. And that's one thing that I look at is be okay having intrusive thoughts, the thoughts that everybody has. Respond to it differently than you normally would. And we find that those thoughts will just come and then they'll go. So if we're trying to figure out how do I get those thoughts to stop, sometimes that's the wrong way to think about this. Instead is how can I change the way my brain is thinking about those thoughts? And so, we'll definitely go through some of that treatment here as we go along. So let's kind of go to another one here. How to prevent relapse. So this is just like everything else. Relapse is, when people do really well with treatment, they're not feeling very many symptoms, and then OCD can come back. Because OCD is not curable, which I know sometimes is a hard answer to have, but that doesn't mean you can't live a wonderful, great life. That we just know OCD likes to go like this, up and down, up and down. And when it does that, we know that during the up parts where you're feeling really, really good, we actually still do treatment. I think that's how we prevent relapse, is that you're willing to do treatment regardless of how you're feeling. And treatment can look like, this thing that is contaminated that I don't care about anymore, I'm still going to remind myself that it doesn't bother me. And I'm going to grab it and touch it and put it against my face or whatever exposures you did in the past. That's typically how somebody doesn't relapse back into some of their OCD symptoms. But we're also aware that OCD is OCD, so it can often switch to another topic, or sometimes it wants to. But we got to be ready for that if it does, because we never know what's going to happen. That we're using the same treatment regardless of the topic. And so hopefully that was helpful for you. Any tips for people who start becoming OCD about their OCD? I made a video about this. It's meta OCD, where the OCD kind of goes outside of what the OCD topic is. It's, I'm feeling pretty good often, and so I sure hope I don't have symptoms today. And because they even think that, now they feel like they're having symptoms, and now they're checking and they're wondering and they're ruminating. How can I make sure I don't have symptoms again? How can I make sure I'm doing well? And that just becomes kind of a mean cycle to get in. And so people who start worrying that they are having thoughts and that their OCD might come back, we actually embrace it just like everything else. Where, you've heard me say this probably in some videos that like maybe, maybe not are often the magic words that we're going to say, hey, maybe I'll have OCD, maybe I won't. That, it sounds absolutely strange, but if you feel like your OCD is going to come back, we often celebrate it. We're like, sweet, I love it that I have these feelings that came back and these thoughts. It's so wonderful. It's a completely different response than you may want to do. But how that helps is like it teaches your brain that like, wow, you don't care that you have OCD symptoms. And when you don't care that you have symptoms, then the brain doesn't want to keep producing these your way because you don't care. But the more that you care if the OCD is going to come back or not, or if you're obsessing about your OCD, the more it's going to say, this is a problem. You need to keep thinking about it and make sure you know what to do with it when the time comes if OCD comes back. And that's not the way we want to live. We want to say, hey, you can come back or not. It's your choice. I'm not going to do anything with it. And that's kind of the mindset that you want to have with this. And so, sweet. People are still here. Just looking at the comments, making sure I'm still alive. So, how can I help somebody without OCD understand the basics as well as the severity of the disorder? This is a really good question. Because we know, like we see on TV, what OCD looks like, and it's not correct most of the time. And so to share kind of what OCD looks like, for me, I share videos. Because I know somebody's going to see, hey, this is actually what OCD is. This is this specific topic. This is this. I know you said you're OCD about your room, but that's actually not a thing. This is, you can be particular, but this is what OCD is. It's mingled with a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, where you are urged to do a behavior to fix that and to make it better. And because of this, that's not somebody being particular. That's someone who feels this urge and need to do that. And that's kind of how I explain the disorder. And if they want to know specific topics, sometimes I do that as well. And so, each person's different on how you might share this, and I try to be positive with whoever I share it with, so they don't feel like I'm trying to show them off or tell them that they're wrong or anything, because people just don't know, and that's okay. But it's our, at least my job, I feel like, to educate, and you can kind of make that your mission as well if you'd like. So, how can I talk to my mom about getting help? This is a really good question, because I actually get a lot of people who call me. I run a private practice, and they're like, hey, my mom needs to get help, or my dad or my brother. How can I get them in to see you? And I'm always like, man, that's, I don't want to manipulate people into coming, but how we can get people to help is just continue to support and to love them and to show them that, like, I care about you regardless of what you're going through, and I'm willing to help you through it. So you can give some of those prompts that say, like, hey, I'm willing to help you through therapy if you'd like. I'll be there every step of the way. Here's some videos that maybe will help you if or if they're in treatment already. Like, here's what I can do to help you. I'm willing to sit through kind of some of these exposures and help you through it. I think when people are very forceful, all of a sudden the person's not so interested in doing treatment, because that means you're telling them to feel anxious on purpose. And people don't want to feel anxious on purpose. And so that's something that you kind of think about, is like, be patient. People tend to come around. I hope it's not when they're at rock bottom, but to encourage them early enough. I think when people are like, if you do this, I'm going to leave you, or things like that, usually those don't work out so well. But it's something where, they kind of be patient with the person. So, since I found out I have OCD, I can't stop researching. Is this common? Totally. I think whenever there's anything that's happening in our life that we learn about, we tend to research and we try to figure it all out. But we tend to get some answers that we can accept, and then we just kind of move forward. When it's OCD, people get answers and then they're like, I think I understand it. But then they might research again and research again and research again. But the difference between just like, I want to know what OCD is, and this is OCD kind of urging me to do it, is really that anxiety. You kind of think of your motivation. Why am I on the computer right now researching? Is it to gain some certainty? Is it to feel comfortable? Is it to relieve some of the stress? If so, that's not something I'm going to do right now. If it's just I'm curious because this is a new thing for me and I don't know what it is, then totally research it. But you look at that motivation. You'd have to be perfectly fine if you didn't research it. Maybe I'll do it next week, that should be fine. But if it's like, do it now, do it now, do it now, that's where we say, oh, let's hold back, possibly not do that compulsion right now, because you're going to get some answers maybe that are just going to keep you ruminating. And that's the thing we don't want to do. You don't want to keep ruminating, because that means you're going to be stuck. Your brain's going to keep thinking and thinking and thinking, and you're trying to find an answer. And so you kind of think about, what am I looking for that I haven't found yet? And it's likely you might not find it. Okay, people are still here. Wonderful. How to convince your mind that it's OCD talking. This can be a big trap, because actually we try not to convince our mind that OCD is talking. I know people use different phrases like, you're not your OCD, or OCD is not real. I mean, I guess they say OCD is real, but they say the thoughts are not real. And what we do is, like, that can be good, but it also can be some reassurance that you have to tell yourself. Like, if you have to tell yourself that to feel better, you already know it's probably not something you want to say. So instead of convincing yourself that this is OCD talking, we actually are saying, if you're even questioning and you feel some anxiety, it's kind of like an equation. You feel some anxiety, you're questioning something, it equals OCD. We're just going to kind of assume that most of the time. And if that's the case, and we don't use that for reassurance either, but if that's the case and we say, hey, this may or may not be OCD, sometimes that's a good answer to give. And it's okay, because that tends to be part of the treatment, is to say, I'm choosing to not figure this out right now because maybe it's not as important as I think it is. So your job's not to convince your mind that it's OCD talking. It's actually just to live life and enjoy. And if your brain questions, is this OCD? You would probably know, but you wouldn't be urged to figure it out and ruminate through it. Can OCD thoughts manage our dreams? It's interesting. So I don't know much about dreams, but I know that I've had some pretty interesting dreams that just come out of nowhere. And I think we're really good at making associations. I had this dream because of this, or I had this dream because of this. But if that worked, how come I can't dream about like eating a bunch of candy right before bed and then I dream about candy? Like, I don't think it works that way. Maybe people will figure it out, but it doesn't work for me. My assumption is that OCD doesn't manage people's dreams. I think people have had dreams, OCD wise in there that I've heard of. But I don't think it's running the show. I think it's just part of what you've been struggling with and dealing with that probably infiltrates your dreams. So I'm trying to go through these pretty quick so I can get through a lot of questions. How to know if it's really my OCD or it's a true memory or real mistake. This is a big one. With real event OCD, it's where there's something real that has happened in their past that, they think about and they ruminate about, but can also be false memory OCD, where they're thinking about, hey, I don't know if this is real or not. I don't know all the details about this story, the situation that happened. It's usually something pretty negative that happened in someone's life, and they ruminate about it. They're trying to figure out, is this real or is this not real? And that's just a natural process of the brain because you had a thought, is this real? So you want to think about it. But we know with OCD, if you do that, you actually are probably going to get more stuck in this because sometimes we don't know. And when somebody feels like they do know, they finally figured out if it was a true memory or not, they start doubting again. And so that's kind of the trap. So we try not to figure out if it's a true memory or not. You're probably going to hear me say a lot of the same things, but that's really what it is. Like, if you try to figure it out, it's actually feeding the OCD. Instead, our job is to be more uncertain and say, I don't know. It could be true. It also cannot be true. But you're not putting more weight to one or the other. I've heard people who are just so sick of the thought that they finally just agree with it. They're like, yep, I totally did that thing. Yep, sure, totally did it. That's awesome. But there's not like because you did it, here's the repercussions and you need to go to jail or, whatever the worry or fear is. We're saying we're taking value away from all of it. And so that's the biggest compulsion with this type of OCD is trying to figure it out and ruminate. And your job is to say, hey, if my brain even questions, is this real or not? Have your answer all ready to go. May or may not be real. I don't know. We'll see. And that takes the power away, but you stay committed to that. Okay. How to enjoy the things we used to enjoy before OCD took over our lives. I say do it now. A lot of people want to wait. I'm going to do treatment and I'm going to get through this whole thing and then I can start living. But I say literally live life now. As you're on this call, what can you do differently to help you live life? You find things that you used to enjoy and you do it. Whether you feel motivated, whether you think it's a good idea, whether you're not up for it, it doesn't matter. You just do it. And the more you do that, it starts retraining your brain that you're not controlled by your emotions. You're going to do what you want to do. And so we don't look for how can I get back to who I was before OCD, because you're you now. So be you now, whatever that looks like. And sometimes people have to re-identify, who am I with OCD? But your OCD doesn't have to define you. It's not your identity. Who are you as a person? You identify your values and your goals and you be that person. The more you do it, the more people actually build more confidence, even with treatment. So live life now. How do we differentiate, there we go, if a thought is actually out of OCD or if it's just a thought? Hey, that's kind of like the other one. If you're trying to figure out if a thought is OCD or not, like we said, it's a compulsion. We're trying not to do that. I do sometimes use that equation like I mentioned. If I have a thought, I have anxiety, I don't see immediate danger, I'm just going to assume it's OCD. But I still don't know, but that's okay. Maybe, maybe not. That tends to be a pretty big phrase most people use. And I know some people are like, but I need to know, because if I don't know how to respond to it. If you're thinking this hard about it, we're just going to assume it's OCD related. Because if not, it should just be a thought that comes and then it might go. Okay. How to deal with the phase when you feel you want your intrusive thoughts. Hey, I made a video about this. So some people worry, some people might feel like they actually want their intrusive thoughts. And the reason I typically see this is because if you want your intrusive thoughts, that means that it's OCD and it's not really you, if that makes sense. Some of these thoughts can be kind of scary. They can be worrisome. So if you're still having intrusive thoughts, it can be kind of a comfort actually for some. Like, whew, now I know this is OCD. It's not really me. That's typically where I might see this. And so we might say that's actually a compulsion to notice or see if you're having intrusive thoughts or not, because you're checking. You want to see if it is or not. I'm not sure if that's the case for this specific question, but that's typically what I see. Tips on ROCD, so relationship OCD. How to stop thinking I have to break up. Well, this is like the biggest question usually for relationship OCD. It's kind of like the other ones. If you're trying to figure out an answer, we already know most of the time it's a compulsion. And so we can't stop the thoughts. We just want the thoughts to come, and your job's to not put power or value to it and let it go. So if it says, oh, do you know if you need to break up with this person or not? Sometimes the answer is like, maybe I do, maybe I don't. And you're okay with that answer. You're not going any further with it. Or if you're really annoyed, then you just agree, yeah, I probably totally need to leave the relationship. And that is not necessarily getting rid of the thoughts, but it's saying that you can have the thought and then it's going to just pass on its own. And that at some points, people break up, but that's okay. That you're not going to have to question it too much. You're just going to kind of count on knowing. And just let, if OCD gets in the way, then we know if you're feeling anxious, that's typically the answer that we give, is maybe, maybe not. How to handle when it feels real and not like OCD. It's kind of like the other ones, that a lot of OCD symptoms, if it didn't feel real, you probably wouldn't worry about it as much. And so these thoughts that you're having, we don't have to figure out if they're even real or if they're not. We try not to handle it. We do treatment. So if you feel like your OCD, let's see, handle when it feels real and not like OCD. We're just going to assume, we take all this, at least what I do is I just throw it all in one bucket and say, we're just assuming it's OCD for now, as you're going through treatment, if that's something you're choosing to do. And if it feels real, then we just embrace it. Because if it feels real or not, we're still living life. You're still choosing to live life regardless of the feelings. And so hopefully that was a good answer for you. All right. Can OCD be cured? I keep seeing recovery coaches saying that it can be. Any thoughts? So this is pretty important actually. There are, I don't know if you know the difference, there are coaches. So it can just be anyone. Somebody who decides, hey, someday I just want to open my own thing, create a few ads, and just be a coach. I want to tell people how to treat their own OCD. They don't have to go to schooling. They don't have to be on any, they don't have to take a test. They don't have to be on any ethics board. They can just choose to do it. Not all of them are choosing to be, are harmful or not, but they can kind of get away with using words like cure or overcome. They kind of use these special words to kind of entice you to get you into their practice because they can use that. But as therapists, we know that's not really ethical. And so we choose not to use that. So I would go to somebody if they were like, they said they can cure me, so I'm going to do it. But I typically are pretty weary of that because OCD is not curable, but it's managed really, really well. And you just got to do the treatment for it. And, I make it sound easy, but I know the treatment's really hard, but getting with a good therapist can really, really help. And so, not, like I said, I'm not bashing all coaches or anything like that, but I just know, seeing somebody who's a licensed therapist, who's on an ethics board, that's going to keep them in check. Make sure that you're getting really good ethical treatment. That's super important to me, especially with OCD. It's not something to play around with. Can an intrusive thought be about anything? Yes, we can have intrusive thoughts of literally about anything. They can be good things, they can be bad things, they can be whatever. And we all have it. I created a meme once, I don't remember exactly how I said it, but it was like 99% of the world has intrusive thoughts and the other 1% is lying. I don't know if that's true or not, but what it comes down to is like we all have intrusive thoughts. The problem sometimes with OCD is that that thought sticks, where with somebody else that thought comes and they're like, oh, that's so kind of strange, and then it moves on. And so yeah, it can be intrusive thought about anything. Intrusive thought is a thought we don't necessarily want or care about, but it just comes anyway. How to handle guilt or shame that real event OCD can carry. This is a tough one because guilt and shame love to live with real event OCD because that's something real that happened in your life. But what I look at is like, does the guilt match what you're going through right now in your life? Does it match the situation? If it doesn't match the situation, it doesn't belong. We're feeling guilt for something that happened in the past. And in my opinion, guilt is something that we feel to learn from the experience. But how can we learn from an experience when sometimes it's so far in the past we don't remember every detail, or we probably have already learned from the experience just naturally. We don't have to think about it too much. Guilt is okay to have, and we sometimes just have to accept that feeling, but we don't put power to it, just like it were anxiety. A video I created, we kind of answer it the same way, where people can embrace it by saying, I love this feeling, this is great, I love that I feel guilty right now, this is so wonderful, I hope I feel it all day long, this is so great. But what people typically want to do is like, I feel guilty, let me think about the past experience and how I can make this better, and did I really do that thing? And they kind of are questioning, which brings on more guilt. So most people try to commit themselves to saying, doesn't matter what feeling I'm having right now, not that feelings don't matter, but I'm embracing it. I'm choosing to embrace this guilt to say, sweet, doesn't match the situation right now. I'm sitting right here, I'm doing a live thing, I'm sitting in my chair, there's a bookcase behind me, whatever. Doesn't match the situation. Do I need guilt right now? Probably not. So I already know this is a false signal that's being sent. Should you never talk about your OCD, the thoughts, with relatives or friends? Well, I think it's up to you. Most people, I say, share about your OCD. I mean, not like going down the street screaming it at people, but share with those who are close to you if you feel comfortable. It can be helpful kind of on a recovery journey to say, hey, I'm willing to embrace that I have OCD, and often some people might plan it out. If they're talking about some of these topics that are really tough, like Harm OCD or POCD, they might say, hey, here's this video in conjunction with what I'm about to tell you, so you can understand it a little bit more. Because people don't understand OCD very often. But those who really love you and are close to you are going to care. Most of the time, they're going to help you through it. So it's up to you. I've found when people are like, I can't tell my friends, I can't do it, they're going to judge me, they're not going to understand, they're not going to want to be with me anymore. They'll tell their friends and they're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought. They actually care about me. They're calling me, they're asking me how I'm doing the treatment. Like, it's such a better experience than they expected. So it's up to you if you want to take that risk or not. Each person's different. Why do flare-ups feel like starting at square one? Because we tend to have this all or nothing type of mindset. It's very like, yeah, I'm doing well or I'm doing horrible. And when they're doing well, they're riding that wave, which is great. And then they have one symptom or a few different symptoms and they're like, oh no, this is horrible. I just haven't recovered from this. And that's one of the thinking styles that I try to help people get out of. We just say, we already know OCD waxes and wanes. I don't know who came up with that term, but waxes and wanes. It's going to get worse and it's going to get better. But we know that there's always a better part. But we can make that even better by doing something about it, whether it's treatment or getting support through that. So it's going to feel like it's horrible, but you just say, hey, challenge your own thinking. Past 7 days were great. Today and yesterday were not so great, but that's okay because I had 5 days that were wonderful, and these 2 days, that's all right. They weren't the worst, but can I find some positives about what happened today? Instead of, this all or nothing type of thinking. I have HOCD and often get intrusive thoughts as images. How to move past these, please. So HOCD, some people call it homosexual OCD or sexual orientation OCD, and it's kind of like these others. We don't get past the thoughts, we embrace the thoughts. And embracing doesn't mean you are completely agreeing with it. Embracing means you're allowing the thought to come and let it go. You're not putting judgment to it, you're not putting power to it, you're just letting it be. Because you're going to have a thought and it's going to say, is this true? Is this not true? And if you start engaging with that, you're going to go down this rabbit hole that's going to keep going and going. Most people try to give themselves an answer of, it might be true, might not be true. I don't know. It's not my job to figure this out right now. Or they might say, I'll never know for sure. And we kind of put a lot of power to words, but words are just words. And so the more times people can commit to answering it with something like that, the more I find these thoughts not necessarily slow down. They could, but they come and your brain's like, I already know what they're going to answer, so I don't really care. And then it might move on all by itself. So move past by not doing anything about it often, which is, I know, way easier said than done, of course. So I'm seeing a lot of questions come in. If I don't get you guys questions, I'm going to save them so we can do it again later. Why psychosomatic pain is painful with OCD. If you don't know what this is, the brain's really good sometimes, when it's having a really hard time essentially mentally, it causes physical pain. I see this with a lot of different things. OCD, I've seen it as well. Sometimes I just kind of think of the brain as overloading itself. It's like there's so much pain there that your body needs to feel it. Or the body almost, I'm not a medical doctor, but it almost like shuts down a little bit to kind of preserve or protect you from the world because it's so much anguish has come. So that's kind of what I see. And I'm going to lose my voice. Can OCD episodes get better over time? Oh yeah, totally. So doing treatment definitely helps with this. Like I said, exposure and response prevention really, really can make a difference. Episodes get better, but we've got to do the treatment. A lot of people just want to wait it out, and it doesn't work so well. And so having that hope that things will get better, I always tell people, have faith. You can't see it just yet, but you'll see it on the other side. But you got to get to the other side. And the only way to get there sometimes is to do treatment. So trust in that. What to do when a metaphobia and OCD dream up? Well, that's an interesting way to say that. Metaphobia is kind of the fear of vomiting, of throwing up. People can often have this. It's actually separate than OCD. And then there's also OCD. People can have both. When dreaming up, maybe that means they're mixed together. So when people have this, we actually treat it the same. Even though they're separate diagnoses, we treat it the exact same through exposure and response prevention. And so even though it's not, a metaphobia is not OCD, I do the same treatment typically for it, whether we're stepping closer to the threat, we're staying uncertain about it, we're not trying to figure it out, you're not avoiding, you're not doing compulsions, just like it were OCD. And so they kind of like to play together because, there's a lot of obsessive thinking with the metaphobia. Is the fear of schizophrenia or worried about being delusional an OCD fear? Yes, totally. I think that, I don't know if there's a specific phrase for it, but some people have called it like going crazy OCD or schizophrenia OCD or delusional OCD. It's really, OCD takes what people care about and what they value. And so it might take this and you might have a thought one day, hey, I wonder if you have schizophrenia. Did you just hear a voice? It can be something as simple as that, where it just sparks it and says, hey, now you have to keep thinking about it because you don't really know for sure. It's definitely a topic of OCD, but like you'll find out, any topic of OCD all filters down to the same thing. And the same thing is uncertainty, because people aren't afraid of what they know. They're afraid of what they don't know. So you think about that for your specific topic. Is it something you know for sure? Or is it something that you are guessing and maybe questioning, asking a lot of what if questions for? Is OCD hereditary or learned behavior? I've been beating myself up that I've taught my 16-year-old OCD. It's definitely genetic. We know that, last statistic, hopefully it's correct, 1 in 4 will have OCD. So if I had 4 children, they kind of say maybe 1 in 4 will have OCD. Statistics might have changed. There might be more data on that, but it's definitely, in genetic, but we also can learn different behaviors. But you kind of think about, like, we want to do what we want to do. So we can watch our parents do whatever they're going to do, but if we don't want to do it, we don't care, we're not going to do it. So a lot of parents beat themselves up for this. I gave my child OCD, or now they do this behavior, now they wash their hands a lot, whatever it is. But it's like, it's likely they might have actually been doing that all on their own, whether it was now or it was later. We know some environment plays a part, but like I said, we're going to do what we want to do. And you think about that for yourself and your parents. They do something over and over and over and over and over again that you just don't do now. Because if this logic worked, wouldn't you be doing it? So that's kind of what I say. Be kind to yourself, especially as a parent. Your child's going to be all right, and you don't have to blame yourself for this. Could you give some examples of some exposures that are good for real event OCD? Hey, this one's a hot topic tonight. Typically we use scripts. So we know there isn't a question of what the event was in the past. It's the person's trying to relive the event and feel all the emotions and fix it and all that. So if we write a script, it's essentially writing a story of the actual event. This is what happened. Here's everything that I know. And we kind of just leave it at that. And some people will record it in their phone and they'll listen to it. And we turn it into a story. So it's not just, here's the event. It's like, Tommy walked down the street. He gave me this facial expression. I flipped him off, or whatever the event was. And we use facial expressions and we use emotion. And sometimes your job is to just read the script over and over and over and over and over and over again, or listen to it over and over and over and over again. And what you'll find is that your job is to actually respond differently to the story. You're not saying, oh yeah, that's the way that happened. Oh yeah, I got to repent for this. Oh yeah, whatever it is. You're saying, oh yeah, cool. Yep, that totally happened. Sweet, awesome. You're changing the reaction you have. Even if you think it's a really grievous act that happened, your job is to change this reaction you have. Because if not, you're going to keep having the same reaction. That's how we're retraining the brain to say, let me think of this story, but here's how I'm responding to it. That tends to be one of the biggest exposures for this. If medication has made 95% of OCD symptoms better, but I haven't done exposures, am I cheating in some way? That's a good question. So medication can actually do quite a lot for somebody. But for me, I always love if people can do it in conjunction with their medication, even if they're doing well, because we never know what's going to happen in the future. I want the brain to be really good. I want it to have you retrain it to say, whether the medication continues to work or not, I am prepared. I am ready to go. I've retrained that pathway so strongly that if OCD does happen, OCD symptoms, then cool, then it happens. But you're ready to go. So I don't know about cheating, but I'd say do treatment with it. Let me fix that there. I don't know what thoughts are real, and I gotta make that bigger. I don't know what thoughts are real and which ones are not. I'm scared that when I get those thoughts, but I have a hard time knowing which ones are true and which ones are not true. Aha, same question as before. We're not trying to figure out which ones are true, which ones are not true. We're just saying thoughts are thoughts. Enjoy your life right now. Live it in the moment. Sometimes people will use some mindfulness to remind themselves that they are living life right now. Whether they're noticing sounds that they can hear around them, or they are touching a fidget, or they're playing with whatever. That's life right now. Thoughts are going to be thoughts. You kind of commit to saying, I don't even know what's going to be true and what's not, because does it matter in the end of it all? Or is it just the urge that's urging me to do this? So I'm getting down to my last few questions here. So ROCD, what is the goal of the exercise of looking at a partner's flaw and saying, oh, I love that nose? So I had a video on this, and after I made it, I was kind of thinking, each person is different. Some people, this might be a good exposure where, let's say they're focusing on the person's nose. They can't stop thinking about it. It's really bothering them. If they choose to avoid it because it's causing symptoms, it's causing a lot of anxiety, this is where this might be helpful, where we say, let's change the response or the reaction you have because you're seeing that nose. So you're seeing it on purpose and you're saying, man, I love that. That's so great. Look how big that is. Or look at those pores, or whatever the worry is. That's how I'm responding differently. But then I'm also taking the threats and responding with maybe, maybe not. I might be able to handle this forever. I might not. We'll see. Might be miserable forever. We'll see. I don't know. That's how we're responding. For some, they purposely look at the person's nose because they're wanting it to change. They want to see if they can figure it out, if it's going to be okay. That might not be where, we might use a different statement for that to say, actually the compulsion is looking at the nose, so let's not look at the nose. Or, everyone's different. We might look at it, but respond differently to it. That's really the biggest deal here. Okay, those two are the same. So this is actually, I know there's a lot of questions on here, and I want to get them all, but they're going to be saved. Facebook, someone asked this, and I wanted to make sure it was last. But it says, hi Nathan, can you please tell me how your OCD and anxiety course is different than your videos? So if you see my videos, I make a pretty general sense of like, here's this topic, here's treatment for this. In my actual course, I go pretty specifically, very structured. Here's what OCD is. Here's how it belongs in your life. Here's how you can learn about yourself. Here's how to do exposure and response prevention. Here's some worksheets to help you through it. And then here's how to actually maintain your progress. That's how I make it different. So it's very structured, helps you through it. Where my videos are still really good help, but they're mainly just for the general audience. And so if you're interested in that, let me pull that up here. The website, I'll put it down in the description as well. It's OCDandanxietyonline.com. I made it affordable. It's like essentially one price. So most therapists, you'll see them once and it'll pay for it. And you have access for life, which is great. And so this is my first time doing this. Let me know if you think that I should continue doing these. I might try a different format, get some of those questions on the live chat. Like I said, I kind of got these questions earlier because I lost them all on YouTube. And I wasn't sure if there was going to get more. And so let me know, I'd love to see in the comments. I know you guys are writing here if this is something you'd like me to do again. And I think you're wonderful and you're awesome. And it makes me happy that you are even here because it shows that you are wanting to make some type of change or help someone else make some type of change in their life. So give yourself credit for that. Have some self-compassion, because without you building yourself up, how are you going to get better? with this. And so I guess with that, I'm going to end the stream, and then I'll look for your comments to see how often I should do this and if you enjoyed it or not. So thank you very much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Thanks so much.